Hi, everybody. Today we'll be conducting a training on measurement. So first I want to talk about the definition of measurement and the functions of it and how they relate to the field of behavior analysis. So the definition of measurement is the process of assigning numbers or units to features of objects or events. So we want to use measurement to compare the measurements of the target behavior before and after treatment. This optimizes the effectiveness of our interventions and it verifies evidence-based treatments. So we want to take a measurement of what the target behavior looked like before we do any intervention, so we get a baseline, and then we also want to measure the behavior during and after the intervention so we can know how effective we've been. This enables us to be accountable and achieve ethical standards for our clients. So there are direct and indirect measurements. First, I want to talk about indirect measurements. Indirect measurement just means that you're not actually observing the client engaging in the behavior. So you might get some indirect measurement from interviews with the parents or with the clients themselves by answers to questionnaires or using testing scores or assessment scores. These measures aren't very reliable because you're not actually able to see the behavior yourself. So you definitely want to use indirect measurement for extra information, but you want to use direct measurement to get a true sense of what the behavior looks like. So now direct measurement, like I said, is actually observing and collecting data on the target behavior. So then there's continuous measurement and discontinuous measurement. Continuous measurement means all instances of the behavior are detected, and discontinuous measurement means some instances of behavior are detected. And I'm going to talk about both of these type of measurement and why you may or may not use one or the other. But before I do that, all measurement falls under one of the three dimensions. So the three dimensions are repeatability, which means that the behavior can be counted. Temporal extent means that you can count the amount of time the behavior lasts. Or temporal locus, which means the behavior occurs at a certain time. So first, there's repeatability measures. The first one is count or frequency. Count and frequency, it's just what it says it is. It's counting the number of times that the behavior occurs. So we're going to watch a little video and count the behavior that is occurring. I chose a laughing behavior because this this video is all about the Minions. So while we wait for the ad here, we're going to count the number of times that the Minion laughs in the video. And so let's go ahead and take a look. So as you can see, that laughing behavior occurred 6 times in the 45-second video. So now you can use the count and the length of time to determine the rate, because rate is the number of responses per unit of time. So I may want to know how many times the behavior occurs every minute or every hour. In this example, the video was 45 seconds. So I could say that the rate would be the behavior of laughing occurred 6 times in 45 seconds. The last repeatability measure I want to talk about is celeration. Celeration is how rates of response change over time. It can accelerate, increase, or decelerate, decrease. So in this example, the laughing, it almost seemed to accelerate because the length of time that the laughing occurred got longer. A good example for celeration is kids studying their definitions using flashcards. So they may make 100 flashcards with words and definitions, and every day they time themselves for a minute practicing those definitions. So maybe the first day they're able to only get 5 right in the minute. And then maybe the next day they practice, they're able to get 7 right. And then maybe the next day they practice, they're able to get 10 right. So the number of responses may increase or decrease. In this example, it increased because the individual kept practicing. So one thing to remember with repeatability measures is you may want to calculate the correct and incorrect responses if possible. Temporal extent measures, the first one would be duration, which is the length of time a behavior occurs. So you can count how long it occurs per session, or even just per occurrence of the behavior, you might want to calculate how long. For example, a child in a classroom may get out of their seat 5 times throughout the day. That's great to know, but what if of those 5 times, one of the times they were out of their seat for an hour? That's important to know because an hour of the day is a long amount of time. So now we're going to go ahead and count the length of the laughing behavior in the Minion video. So I'm going to use the timer on my stopwatch to count the number of seconds that the Minion laughs. All right, here we go. So in this example, for duration, I counted that the Minion laughed for over 9 seconds of the video. Okay, so we can combine the count and duration. We said that the Minion laughed 6 times for a total of 9 seconds. Temporal locus measures. The first one is inter-response time. So inter-response time is the time between 2 instances of a response, or the time, typically like the time between the 2 behaviors. So I could go back and watch the video again and count the amount of seconds in between laughing. Response latency would be the amount of time between a stimulus and response. So I might say to a student in my classroom, stop tapping your pencil, and then the number of seconds that passes before my student responds to that stimulus and stops tapping. So I have another cute video for response latency. The man is going to slap himself, and then we're going to count how many seconds until he responds to the pain of him slapping himself. Okay, so in that example, the man had a delayed response of over 8 seconds before he responded to the stimulus of slapping himself. That's response latency. There are also some derivative measures that we typically use in behavior analysis. So for example, percentage, and I was already right there with creating a percentage, but I wanted to wait until I got to it with the minions. So again, the minion laughed for a total of 9 seconds out of the 45-second video. So 9 seconds divided by 45 seconds times 100 means that the minion laughed for 20% of the video. Another derivative measure is trials to criterion. Trials to criterion means the number of opportunities needed to achieve a predetermined level of performance. So this may take many trials or multiple steps to get to the ultimate goal. So the minion laughing isn't a great example. So I'm going to say, for example, you wanted to teach your client to tact all the colors of the rainbow. So, but your client doesn't know any of the colors, and there's 8 of them. So you want to practice by first teaching her just 2 so she can discriminate the 2, and then adding more in until she's able to name all of them. So you may guess that this is going to take, 15 trials for her to master naming all her colors. And then each day you would graph how many she was able to name. So again, predetermining what her goal should be. She should be able to meet this goal in 15 trials, and then each day graphing until she gets to that goal. Definitional measures, topography, and magnitude. So topography means how a behavior looks. It is important that this is defined so that everyone measuring the behavior of a client is able to distinguish the target behavior. So for example, with the minion laughing, sometimes it was just a small ha laugh. Does that count? Yes or no? Sometimes it was like full out cracking up laughing. Sometimes people, when they laugh, they snort. So that needs to be defined in the operational definition so that anybody that's measuring this behavior knows what it looks like, knows what it sounds like. Same with magnitude. Magnitude is the force or the intensity of the behavior. So the minion's laughing got a lot more intense, a lot more forceful towards the end of the video. He was like cracking up laughing, he couldn't stop, okay? So that was a lot different than just the snickering. So again, everybody the entire team that works with the client needs to know what's going to count as the behavior. So some discontinuous measurement methods. Again, discontinuous means we're not counting every instance that the behavior occurs. So the first one is whole interval recording. The client must engage in the behavior for the entire interval. This is an underestimation of behavior because, for example, if we used the minion video as the interval, was the minion engaging in the behavior for the whole interval? No, so it wouldn't count. However, the minion engaged in that behavior for 20% of the video. That's significant. So again, it's an underestimation because I wouldn't count it even though he did engage in the behavior for 20% of the time. Same, the opposite goes for partial interval recording. So partial interval just means the client can engage in a behavior at any point in the interval and it will be counted. So this means it's an overestimation of the behavior. So for example, with the minions, his behavior would be counted for sure because he did engage in the behavior for part of the interval. However, he only engaged for 20%, which is way under half of the time. So it's an overestimation of what actually occurred. Momentary time stamping is whenever the target behavior is occurring at the moment that the interval ends. This does not require undivided attention of the observer, however much behavior may be missed. So in this example with the minions, his behavior would be counted for momentary time sampling because he was laughing at the end, but typically this is an underestimation. Behaviors are missed because the likelihood of that behavior occurring in that precise moment is not always very likely. And planned activity check is very similar, although this is used for groups of students working together. The teacher counts how many students from the group are engaged in the targeted activity at the end of each interval. The last 2 measurement methods I want to talk about. The first one, permanent product recording. So permanent product recording is measuring the effects of the behavior on the environment after the behavior has occurred. Oftentimes, this is when teachers grade work that students have turned in. So I may be measuring the behavior of writing an essay. And so I just tell my students to do an essay on, a research topic. And they turn it in. and I grade it, and then I'm able to determine how well the client or the student is able to write an essay based off what they turned into me. So I don't actually observe the behavior. The example I have here in the picture on the right is the percentage of dirty laundry that my fiance can get into the hamper versus the amount that he didn't get into the hamper. So I didn't see him throwing the clothes on the floor and leaving them on the chair. And I didn't see him putting the clothing that's in the hamper. However, there's a permanent product here that I can use to measure. I can go in there to do his laundry and I can count. So I actually did go in there and count. There's 15 items total. And 5 of the items, 3 on the floor and 2 on the chair, are not in the hamper. So 35 out of 15 is 33% he missed. And 10 out of 15, 66%, he did get in the hamper. Okay, so again, remember I talked about correct versus incorrect. So how many are in and how many are not in. The last one I want to talk about is computer-assisted measurement. Computer-assisted measurement of behavior is data collection software using computers, phones, or tablets, and it has become very popular and beneficial in the field of behavior analysis. The programs use the techniques that I have already described, but the technology simplifies the recording of the data and will often calculate and graph the data for you. So those are very popular in behavior analysis and when conducting ABA therapy, because you're able to collect data using technology versus pen and paper. So I hope that this training on measurement has helped you guys, and feel free to re-watch the video to review the terminology. Thanks. Have a good day.